All right, so I've been thinking a lot about leverage and leverage in regards to daily drawdowns, how a trader should lay out their leverage. And I have a number of thoughts on that I want to share with you. So here's a stop loss, little matrix. If I was willing to lose 50 bucks on a trade and I had a 2-point stop loss, how many MES contracts could I trade? It's simple math. If I had a 10-point stop loss, how many contracts could I trade? It's simple math. Because at 10 points with one MES, if I lost 10 points, that's 50 bucks. So the math is correct. And so I made them by every 50 bucks, basically all the way up to $1,000. If you're willing to lose $1,000 on a trade, how many MES contracts could you trade? I marked out the 6-point line because this is a very typical stop loss in our system. So if you're willing to lose $1,000 on a trade, on a single trade, you had a 6-point stop loss you determined was your perfect stop loss, which I recommend is 1 point past the ladder point of any break level. You could trade 33 MESs. Notice that translates to 3 ESs. So if you're trading more than 3 ESs or more than 33 MESs, you must be willing to lose $1,000. If you're not willing to lose $1,000, you have over leveraged. So let's take this to the next step. Let's say you are willing to lose 300 bucks on a day. So I'm willing to lose $300 today before I got to say, all right, I'm out. Okay, great. That's the first decision we need to make. The second decision we need to make is how many losses, let's say you lost your first trade, you lost your second trade, you lost your third trade. How many losses would you sustain before you basically have to make the decision, something's not right. I'm marking my levels wrong. Price isn't respecting the levels today. I just need to get out. So we're going to assume this trader said 3 trades. If I lost trade 1, trade 2, and trade 3, I need to be done. Well, under that scenario of a $300 daily loss, you could lose $100 a trade, assuming you were going to use this system of an equal risk per trade. So, all right, so if I'm willing to risk $100, I can come up in my $100 column and copy and paste that down here to where if I had a 2-point stop loss, how many contracts could I trade? Maximum of 10. What if the perfect stop loss was 10 points away? Well, maximum of 2 contracts. So this is if you're going to do a third and a third and a third approach. It's not the approach I recommend, but it's the approach a lot of traders will take. Let's go to the next one. So here I introduced the idea of a $750 daily loss, and we're going to keep the 300 at the top, okay? So let's move down here to the 750 on this one. So we know we have a high probability system. So I don't expect to take a loss. Under that scenario, maybe instead of just doing a equal risk per trade, my first trade, I'm willing to front load it. I'm willing to lose 450 of the 750. If I lose that, let's drop down and leverage, let's drop down and leverage, let's drop down and leverage, which in of itself is a fantastic practice of after a loss to decrease your leverage. So let's say the first trade I was willing to lose 450. Let's say you lost it. I got to drop down to this 150 category, and I stay here until I make back my 450. I'm going to force myself to trade smaller and smarter until I get back to break even. Then I can come back to this first level of risk. So let's say we had a 2-point stop loss. You could trade up to 45 contracts. 10-point stop loss. You could trade up to 9 contracts. Notice I say up to. Up to. Over here in this $300 scenario, you might say, I'm willing to use 50% of my daily loss on my first trade. I'm the most alert. The market's moving really nicely. My levels are perfect. I'm willing to front run my risk. 2-point stop loss, I could trade up to 15 contracts. 10-point stop loss, I could trade up to 3 contracts. Now, one of the things I definitely want to mention here is somebody might say, I would never trade with a 10-point stop loss. And I'd say, why? You didn't increase your risk. You're still risking 150. Who cares? It's a 10-point stop loss. All you did was trade smaller with a wider stop. Sometimes the break level is 10 points away. Maybe you don't take that trade, and that's okay. But the truth is, I know based off my chart, I can take that trade. I just take it smaller. So don't ever say I'm not going to trade with more than a 6-point stop loss. I think that's a limiting belief. No problem in trading up to a 10-point stop loss under this system. In fact, if I was willing to lose 150, I could probably trade up to a 12 or 13-point stop loss till this gets down to 1 contract. So notice over here, if I do lose this 150, I have to drop to 50. Now the number of contracts changed dramatically. So I may not want to take any trades more than a 6-point stop loss here because now I'm down to 1 contract. 1 contract is the second hardest thing to manage. The first hardest trade to manage is over leverage because your stop is so tiny. The second hardest thing to manage is a 1 contract entry. I know because I do them all the time. They're the hardest ones to manage. So you might want to say after the loss, I'm only going to do 2 contracts and up, which means every entry I have needs to have a perfect stop loss of 6 points or less. Awesome. Great decision. And now you know you're trading up in this area. So I like this idea of the scaling system. I love deleveraging after a loss, staying in the lost column until you make back what you lost in the previous column. Then you can go back to your original leverage. Knowing the perfect stop loss is absolutely critical to this system. And once again, I think the perfect stop loss is 1 point past the ladder point of any break level. So therefore, you look at it objectively and go, yep, that's a 7-point stop loss. Since that's a 7-point stop loss, I know I can trade up to 13 contracts. Can we take this a step further? We absolutely can. And this is where I think our group shines. What if we took this range? We're going to use this bottom range of from $50 to $450. What if I said, instead of just arbitrarily saying the first trade, I'm going to front run my leverage, I decide to leverage based off trend using this same range of 450 to 50. Here's the 4 trades we can take. We can just take a falling knife trade. We can take a counter trend trade. We can take a trade and chop. We can take a trade with the trend. So with the trend, it's laddering up and it pulls back to a backside or a front side or a break level. I'm willing to trade that bigger. And then there's the breakout trade. Chop, 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 breaks out over, comes back and retests the chop. That's one of my favorite trades. I'm willing to go the biggest possible. Well, what is the biggest possible? So in this case, I took the range from $50 to $450, and I simply brought it over here, and I categorized it by trend to where I know, okay, my first trade, hey, this is a little falling knife trade. I want a 10-point stop loss. I did this trade today, by the way, 1 MES. And I know I got a 10-point stop loss, and I traded small based off the trend. Oh, we're in chop. Okay, I've decided I'm willing to risk 20% of my daily stop loss on a chop trade. And this is max. And let's say the perfect stop on this one was 4 points. I could trade up to 8 contracts. I might decide to only do 4. I might decide to only do 2, but I know my max is 8. And I know if I'm going to be a disciplined trader and I'm going to trade with proper leverage and I'm going to give myself multiple trades today to continue trading because I love trading, I want to be trading, I need to honor this. Once again, I highlighted the 6 points because that is a typical stop loss. You can see with a 750 daily stop loss at a 6-point stop loss, I am ranging from 2 contracts to 15 MESs. Notice at the 750 daily stop loss, there is no room to be trading ES. There really isn't. Now, if you had a 2-point stop loss, which is 45 MESs, sure, you could do 4 ESs, but you better have your stop proper. You better know it was proper because you're betting 60% of your daily loss on that. I've done that often, by the way. But I know it, and I know where my stop is, and I know I have to honor that. I also know that if price is not behaving the way I want it to behave, I will get out of the trade so I can reset my thinking and I can restudy the chart and make sure that the trade I think I'm taking is the trade I'm taking. This would be real simple to print this out on a piece of paper and have this next to your computer to where you could say, okay, we're trending. So I am with the trend. I'm willing to do 250. This is the column I'm looking at. What is my perfect stop loss? I cannot iterate enough that you know your perfect stop loss. Let's talk about that for 1 second. It's so important. Let's go to yesterday. I want to go to RTH. Let's go to yesterday. What happened yesterday? You had with the trend trades all day long. All day long was short, 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 short. Here's your break level. Actually, I want to turn off all these lines because they're going to turn on. So let me turn off all my lines. So yesterday you had all these break levels where obviously at some point you have to say, we're obviously laddering down. When does that happen? When we take out 2 break levels, as we explain in our core strategy. So here is all these break levels. Well, this one's already tested, so you would never take that trade. So let's look at these. Let's look at these 3. Where is the proper break level? So you can draw your ladder point, which is the tippy part. The tippy part. Okay, George, good terms. And what you do is you take out your little tool here and go, okay, I need to be 1 point over that. There's 1 point. What is that? All right, that's 40, 66, 25. That's my stop. So as price is coming back up to this break level trade, awesome. I'm going to front run it 2 ticks. Where does my stop? That's 4 points. Okay, 4 points. I'm with the trend. Let me bring this up. 4 points with the trend. I could trade up to 13 contracts. And maybe what I want to do on those 13 contracts, maybe I want to spread them out across this zone. So I put my first 1 or 2 here and I spread out my 13 contracts all the way across it. The contracts that are going to be entered into the trade way up here have the least risk. They might only have a 2-point stop loss. And now you've spread out your risk amongst the range, because we know all of this is ranges. And in this particular case, you might have only got into 1 contract. So what? You traded smaller, you traded smart, you had the proper stop loss, or you could front run all your 13 contracts right there and just know I'm willing to take the whole 4 points. That's how you would trade that. What's the beautiful thing about this is for this to work, you got to have 2 candle clearance. You have 6 minutes, almost 9 minutes to consult this little chart and make sure that you were trading perfectly with the leverage, given your daily loss, given the trend, giving what percentage of the daily loss you were willing to risk. You might look at this and say, George, I'm not willing to risk 60% on that. And I'll say, no problem. Let's drop this down to $400. Okay, now you're risking 53%. Is that comfortable for you? And you massage these numbers to where you know they're comfortable. You know, if a person is only willing to risk $25 on a falling knife trade, that changes the numbers. No big deal. It's no big deal. And there's nothing wrong with taking a 10-point stop loss. All you do is adjust your leverage. You're not putting more risk in the trade. In fact, you're putting less risk in the trade. 6-point stop loss tends to have proven itself to be the near perfect stop loss for our system. Imagine if you used the leverage for 10 points. You would be trading smaller, and in 90 something percent of your trades, stop loss would never be hit. And you would be trading with great leverage based off the trend. What do you think?
I think it's great. And I'm glad that you've actually went through it and that you recorded it so I could watch this again.
So I think that will be my recording for the leverage matrix. I don't think there's anything I'd want to add to that. It takes into account your daily loss limit. It takes in account of trading with the trend and adjusting your leverage based off that trend.
I think that's the biggest thing. Just like you're saying, it's leverage. It's leverage that always destroys. I guess when going back to when we were speaking before, whether I'm on tilt or not, it's just not being properly positioned. And when you're not properly positioned, then it goes against you. And then you're holding on to a dying trade. At least it wouldn't be as devastating or catastrophic if you were leveraged properly, and then you could just take the loss and be done. So I agree completely. I'm glad you went over it. And that's the thing. I think that's the biggest thing to trading in general. It's just like when Mark Douglas talks about probabilities. Yeah, we have an edge, and most traders that are good, they develop an edge. But the edge is one thing. It doesn't mean that the market isn't going to do another, like the coin toss when Mark Douglas speaks of flipping a coin. You know, it's just sometimes it's going to be a coin toss, even when you're in a trade that is setting up 90 to 100% in line with what it's supposed to do. And it just goes against you. So leverage is a big thing.
There's definitely a few things I would want to add, and I added it to the notes on this page, and I'm going to share this document for people once I know where I would want you to enter data and things calculate for you. Proper stop loss. You cannot be a trader if you cannot establish perfect stop loss. Also, never add leverage to a loser. Just don't do it. I have made my decision. That trade showed us we had 13 contracts. That is your max. No question, no ands, if, or buts. That's the rule. Never allow a winner to become a loser. I'm sorry, but when I'm up a point, I am not allowing that to become a loser because I have seen myself emotionally not do very well under those circumstances. Now I just want to get back to even. That is one of the worst things a trader can say to themselves. I just want to get back to even. Fourth, add to your positions as it is winning. Most traders do the exact opposite. They add to their losers and they get rid of their winners as quickly as possible. And remember, we have no control over price. We are powerless over price. All we can do is mark our level and know with a high degree of certainty that thing is going to bounce, but we have no clue how far it's going to bounce. And I believe those are critical things to have in your brain of that is true without doubt, and I will honor that. If we took our 5 biggest losses and we could get those back, I guarantee you we violated something in here. And usually it's adding leverage to a loser. That losing trade does not need more leverage. You're hoping that it will reverse and I can get out at break even. But I would bet your 5 biggest losses was a result of adding leverage to a loser that went beyond your initial stop loss. This is reason doing the end of the day charts is so critical to your success, because it will prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt proper stop loss makes our system high probability. And if the market decides to not comply with our stop loss, it is not orderly price action anymore. Things could change at any second. And we have set forth the parameters that this system works. Stop losses above the break level at some distance. Some people use 2 ticks. I like a point. I see many times it goes 1 point and then comes back, almost like a little liquidity grab, and it pulls back. Never add leverage to a loser. Man, I'm almost a victim of that every week, it seems like. Like, well, why did I add there? I didn't need to add there, George. I went beyond my leverage there. Trust me, I still challenged with all of that. I'm not perfect, but I do know that that is a rule. Never add leverage to a loser. And as soon as I'm in a losing position, I want to add, that quote pops in my head. It's like, you are not doing it. You are not adding leverage to this loser. Because if it's going to get back up there, it's going to get back up there. And if you needed a bigger stop loss, you should have leveraged differently. Never allow a winner to become a loser. At some point, you've got to decide, this thing is not going to come back against me, and I'll just get out. It didn't touch and go. For me, my trading system is based off touch and goes. It's got to touch my level, and it's got to go. Touch and wiggles do not work for me. Other traders, they have more fortitude or whatever the word might be, and they can stay in those. I don't. I just wait for my touch and goes. If I have a really small day, that tells me there were no touch and goes. When I have a really big day, that tells me that I did great leverage with the trend and it touched and goed. Yesterday was a monster day. I had 35 ESs. Why? Because it would touch and go with the trend. And so I got to trade with the trend leverage. If I don't have with the trend, like today is all chop at max. At max, where this is chop leverage. No big deal. It's not going to be a big day today. We knew that going into it. And just realize we have no control over price. Once you're entered, just like Mark Douglas continuously says, just because you have a high probability system does not mean price is going to cooperate. And because I know those things, this is my system. This is my stopgap. This is the thing that preserves my emotional and mental equity. And if I can't do this right here, I can't be a trader. I need to go buy a lawnmower and start cutting some grass, go get a good vacuum and start cleaning some houses. And there's no shame in any of that. But I believe if we're going to be a professional trader, this must be mastered with perfect execution. You could draw your line wrong, and that's okay. We can correct that. But if you continually break these rules, you should just quit. Or no, I am moving the right direction. My deviations from being perfect in regards to leverage is becoming less. I am tightening up. I am seeing more and more success by following this leverage system. And it's going to make sense. Even if all you did was this system right here, I'm going to take 3 to 5 trades. They're all going to be the same leverage, but I'm going to be respectful of the stop loss and vary my leverage based off stop loss. No problem. It's just we took this to a new level by taking a stop loss range and marrying it to trend and marrying that to the daily stop loss and giving ourselves the ability to make multiple trades. What's the odds of doing 2 breakout trades in a row that's going to take 50% of our leverage? 0. That's not going to happen. There are no 2 breakout trades in a row. This trade only happens 2-3 times a week. This trade only happens a few times a week. This trade happens more. This trade happens more. In fact, counter is the one that's going to happen the most. I rarely take those trades. And you might be in that position where you say, you know what? There's no way I'm taking those trades. Great. Don't put it on your chart. Don't even look at it. I know I'm not going counter. As we're laddering up, I'm not taking hardly any of those shorts. But if I do, let's say it's a high time frame, we're coming up to a 4-hour. We're coming up to a level that's a 4-hour, a 1-hour, and a 30-minute, and they're all inside of a fair value gap. And the untested is right there. Okay, I'm probably going to take that counter trade. No problem. But I do know it's going to be 13% of my daily, which is small, and I'm going to leverage appropriately. Now I've given myself the ability to continue to survive today, to be in the trade that's going to bounce beautifully. It's going to be my perfect bounce. And then I can manage the trade from there. And I'm almost always going to try to enter trades where I can have at least 2 or more contracts. So in this knife fall, if I'm only willing to lose $50, I may not want to enter anything that has a stop loss 7 or more. However, I'm going to be honest, every knife trade, I only do 1 contract. No big deal. This is max leverage. Max leverage. This is max leverage. That's what these words right here says. Max leverage. And maybe that needs to be pushed here. That is max leverage. This is max leverage. This will help keep you out of trouble. Our system helps keep you out of trouble because lines are only activated based off of our rules. And then once they become activated, there should be an obvious, perfect stop loss. And if you're willing to trade within the limits of that stop loss, at the limits of your contracts, the odds of success are in your favor. Do that for 2 weeks. Have 2 profitable weeks where every day we're winners. And trust me, there's people in this group, especially the legacy people, they haven't lost all month. They have not had a losing day. It is possible. But sometimes things go against you. And this is why this exists. It's so that we do not experience emotional devastation and killing ourselves over trying to make it back. We have our system in place. All right. So that's my presentation on the matrix.